Cowboy. Don't look, my dress is gone, whispered the Apache woman behind the waterfall. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the wilderness as the cowboy, Ethan, made his way through the dense forest, his boots crunching on the dry earth, his weathered hands gripping the reins of his horse, and the weight of the long day's journey pressing on his shoulders. He had little idea that his life was about to change forever. The journey had been long, and the road ahead uncertain. Ethan, a man of few words and many scars, was no stranger to hardship. He had spent most of his years riding across the plains, battling the harsh elements in the untamed land. But today felt different. As he pushed through the underbrush, his horse came to an abrupt halt. Something had caught its attention, a strange sound. A rustle of water, a faint cry. Ethan glanced up, squinting against the light. The landscape before him was wild and untouched. But there, hidden behind a veil of mist and falling water, was a sight that made his heart race. A waterfall. The water plunging into a crystal-clear pool, its roar drowning out all else. The land around it was lush and green, an oasis amidst the dry wilderness. And there, standing in the midst of it all, was a woman. She was beautiful, her skin glowing under the dappled sunlight, her hair long and dark, cascading in wet strands down her back. She stood under the waterfall, her body partly veiled by the cascading water, her posture graceful but tense. Her eyes were closed, and she seemed unaware of Ethan's presence. Lost in the tranquility of the moment, he felt a strange pull to her, an unspoken connection that stirred something deep within him. He had seen many women in his life, but none like this. Ethan stayed hidden behind the rocks, watching her in silence. There was something captivating about her. Her movements were fluid, like the water itself, a dance with nature that felt almost sacred. She was dressed in traditional Apache attire, simple yet elegant. A short dress of soft leather, adorned with beads and fringe, clung to her form. It was clear she was a woman of the land, of the earth, someone whose strength was as raw and untamed as the wilderness that surrounded them. But as Ethan watched, he noticed something strange. The woman's gaze flicked nervously over her shoulder, her body tensing. She seemed to sense something not quite right. As if on cue, the wind picked up, blowing the waterfall's mist toward her. She turned slowly, her face pale, her lips trembling as she whispered to herself, "Cowboy. Don't look, my dress is gone." The words struck Ethan like a thunderclap. He had no idea what she meant, but it was clear that something had changed. His heart raced and he took a step forward, wanting to help but not knowing how. He couldn't stay hidden forever, but the fear in her voice held him back. He was a man used to confronting danger head-on, but this felt different. There was a vulnerability in her voice, a quiet plea for respect and privacy. Ethan had been raised to never invade a woman's space, to honor their dignity, no matter the circumstance. But this was a moment unlike any other. The unspoken tension between them was palpable. The woman's body language shifted as she stepped deeper into the water, her shoulders slightly hunched, and her hands clutched against her chest. Her gaze was downcast, the weight of her shame too heavy to bear. Ethan knew he couldn't stand there much longer. He took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the rocks, his boots squelching softly in the mud as he made his presence known. He didn't say anything at first, unsure of what to do or how to approach her. But then, as the woman turned her face toward him, her eyes wide with surprise, he spoke softly, his voice low and calm. "I'm not here to harm you. I didn't mean to intrude. I'll leave if that's what you want. Just don't be afraid." The woman's eyes flickered with caution, but something in his tone, in his quiet sincerity, seemed to reassure her. She didn't speak, but her body relaxed, just a little. Ethan took another step forward, his heart pounding, knowing that this moment was a turning point. There was something about this woman, this Apache woman, that was both familiar and foreign, something that called to him in a way he couldn't explain. He didn't know what had happened to her dress or why she had whispered that strange plea, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't leave her like this. She was a warrior in her own right, but even the strongest among them needed help sometimes. And in that moment, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. He wouldn't leave until she had the help she needed. But as the two stood there, caught in a silent standoff, neither knowing what the future would hold, a sense of something greater than either of them lingered in the air. Something ancient, something inevitable, as if their paths had crossed for a reason. This was only the beginning of a journey neither would ever forget. The water around them rippled with the movement of the woman's hands, the mist swirling as Ethan stood there, unsure of what to do next. She hadn't spoken since his quiet words, and yet the tension between them thickened, almost as if the very air was charged with an unspoken understanding. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on her, but he kept his distance, giving her the space she desperately seemed to need. His instincts told him not to rush her. The wildness of the land mirrored the fierce independence in her eyes, a strength that he admired and in some ways feared. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unvoiced emotions. Her eyes were dark and unreadable, a storm behind them, but she still hadn't moved to leave. She wasn't angry, but there was a quiet sadness to her, as though she carried a burden too great to bear alone. Ethan, despite himself, felt drawn to that sadness, a connection he couldn't explain but could no longer ignore. Finally, the woman broke the silence, her voice softer than a whisper, yet carrying a weight that made Ethan's heart race. "You've seen me," she said, her words almost lost in the sound of the waterfall, but there was no mistaking the sorrow in her tone. "You've seen me when I am most vulnerable. My dress, it's gone, stolen by the water. I didn't mean for you to see me like this." Ethan's heart ached, knowing the shame she felt. He stepped closer, his voice gentle yet firm. "It's all right. I didn't mean to intrude on your privacy. I've been a traveler for many years and I've seen many things, but never anything like this. I understand if you want me to leave, but I'm here if you need help." The woman shook her head, her long braids swaying gently in the breeze. She took a step back, submerging herself slightly deeper into the pool. The water now lapped at her waist, and her body language softened just a fraction. Her eyes met his for the first time, and there was no anger, only an ancient sorrow, one that seemed to span centuries. "I don't want you to leave," she said, her voice steady now, though still tinged with hesitation. "I don't want to be alone anymore. The world has changed, and I don't know where I belong. You're the first person I've seen in days, maybe even longer." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so instead he nodded slowly, understanding the depth of her words. There was something in her expression that told him this wasn't just about her missing dress or the stolen privacy. There was a story here, one filled with pain and loss, and though he didn't yet know the details, he could feel it. It resonated deep within him, a call to protect, to stand beside her, even if for just a moment. "Then you're not alone," Ethan replied quietly, his voice sincere. "I don't know who you are or what you've been through, but I'm here. If you need someone to listen, I'll stay." The woman nodded slowly, her shoulders relaxing as she allowed herself a breath of relief. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She turned her body slightly, facing the waterfall, as if the rush of water could wash away the heaviness in her soul. "My name is Tala," she said, her voice barely audible over the roar of the falls. "I am Apache, my people. We have lived on these lands for generations. But something has changed. The land is no longer as it once was. The storms have come, and with them, a darkness I cannot escape. I thought I could survive it. I thought I could find peace here, but the past keeps chasing me." Ethan took in her words carefully, the weight of her situation sinking in. He could see the warrior in her, the strength beneath the vulnerability. There was a fire in her, even if it was flickering now. He knew that the Apache people had faced unimaginable hardships, had fought and lost so much, but something told him that Tala's story was far from over. "Storms pass," Ethan said, stepping closer, careful not to invade her space. "But it takes time. You've survived so far. You're strong." She didn't respond right away, but her eyes met his once again. There was no anger, no resistance in her gaze, just a quiet acceptance, as if she had long ago learned to live with the scars of her people's past. She nodded just once, as though his words had unlocked something deep within her. "I hope so," Tala said softly. "But there are things I can't change. Things that have already been lost." Ethan didn't press further. He understood that some stories were too painful to tell, too heavy to lift from one's shoulders. Instead, he simply stayed beside her, watching the waterfall cascade over the rocks, the sound of the water filling the space between them. Time seemed to slow as they stood in silence, both acknowledging the quiet bond that had formed in this moment. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the forest in a dimming light, and though the world around them seemed to settle, neither of them was ready to move. Not yet. The future was uncertain, and the past was a heavy burden. But in that moment, there was peace. A shared understanding. Finally, Tala broke the silence once more, her voice quieter but resolute. "Thank you for staying. I wasn't sure I wanted to be seen, but now, I'm not so sure. Perhaps it's time to stop hiding." Ethan gave a soft nod, a feeling of camaraderie swelling within him. "You don't have to hide anymore. Not with me." As the last of the sunlight disappeared behind the trees, both Tala and Ethan stood in quiet contemplation. The waterfall continued to roar, but now it seemed a little less deafening, And though the road ahead remained unclear, one thing was certain: their paths had crossed for a reason.